Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained. I am DM Bloodworth, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about White Box Fantasy RPG. Now, I've known that this game has existed for quite some time, and I do have the light version of Swords and Wizardry. And I know this game is compatible with it. I recently watched a video from made by Eric Bloat and Bloat Games, and I'm pretty sure it was an older video, and he was showcasing the game, and I figured let me take a look at it and and get a hold of it. So here's the game book, and I'll go through in the other view. I'll go through the actual game. The game book mechanics and such, and talk about what the book has to offer. But you can see it's a nice sized pamphlet. Let me get it right there. Pretty pretty decent size. It's not it's not like a pocketbook. It's a small a small pamphlet sized book. 140 pages, and that's 140 pages complete of game here. So it talks about the character creation, the basic game mechanics, including a monster manual and treasures and NPCs, some NPC creation tips and such, adventure tips and such. So it basically has everything you really need in order to play the game. And on Amazon Prime, I paid $4.65 for it. So you really can't go wrong for a complete game, for that price. And considering that the booklet is pretty decent quality. I mean, there's nothing there's nothing that tells me that this this book is not worth every bit of slightly less than $5. So taking a closer look at the game, I'll switch views here and go into the actual PDF, because you can go on drive-through drive-through RPG, and you can download the free watermarked PDF of the book as well. So you can actually buy the physical copy of the book from drive-through. I just found it cheaper on Amazon Prime. So, but anyway, let's switch over to the next view. And so, as you can see here, this is the PDF of the game, and I wanted to just go through the game booklet so you can see it's editing, and some of the words are by Charlie Mason. I guess he is the one of the primary authors, if not the primary author, and Matt Finch and so on. So you have all the people listed here that are involved with the writing of the game rules. Going to this is an OSR, obviously an OSR game mechanics, so it's using the OSR rules and getting started. We'll come here, and they go through. They tell you dice mechanics and how you use dice. A concept of optional rules. Here's a character sheet, and I'll talk a little bit about this a bit later, or possibly in a second video, because I have started a new video series on my channel called Getting Into Character, where we where I do a video specifically on generating characters for the various role-playing games that I have or I'm looking to purchase. So attributes, we get to the very basics here, and the basic attributes are numbers that represent strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. The basic 6 attributes that you see in virtually every fantasy-based RPG, and you roll them. Standard creation, 3 3d6 for each attribute. And the one slight difference here is that you can shift your points from whatever attribute is designed as your primary attribute based on your character class. But you can only shift those points by 1 to 1. So if you increase the primary attribute by 1, you have to take 1 point away from another attribute score. But you cannot lower any attribute below 9 while doing so. All right, and they have other optional rules, so you can roll them straight and just roll straight and go down. I'll come back here. So you could roll your strength, your dexterity, your constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma in that order. And so however you place your, however you roll, that's the order that they'll get placed in there. Or you could use, I think, a more common, flexible rule that many GMs use is you roll your stats, you roll your 3d6 6 times, and then you get to place it within the stats that you wish to, and then you do modifications afterwards. So whichever rule your GM allows you to do is, generally the way that you would do it. So now, one thing that I haven't noticed in other games is that when you have attribute scores that are in the 15 plus range, that you actually increase the amount of experience points that character gains, from having that kind of an ability score. So that's a pretty interesting thing, and they're tied into the actual character class skills and such. So a 15 strength would give a fighter, using that strength bonus, additional experience. And experience point bonuses can stack up to a maximum of plus 15% experience points. So I guess if you have multiple attributes that are 15 or above, that's where you can increase your, the amount of the percentage increase by a total of 15%. Skills, the way that they go is that I'll come back here. So basically, a little bit different than your basic D&D attribute rolls. So a 3 to a 6 is considered low, and that would have a -1 modifier. 17 to 14 is average, and then 15 to 18 is high. That gets you the +1. So the attribute scores and their modifiers are a little bit different than your standard D&D modifiers, where a 13 or a 14 would give you a +1, a 15 to 17 or +2, and then like an 18 is a +3 or more. And you don't get to minuses until you're, I believe, around 7 or an 8 will start giving you minuses, a -1 with a 7 or 8. So so not as much of a range in modifiers in this particular game. So scrolling through, we go through hit points. There's just a three-phase alignment. So you just have law, chaos, and neutrality, and that's how characters are kind of measured along that line or that spectrum of alignment. I personally don't use alignment very often, or I don't like alignment as a true identifier of your character. I think characters are a lot more complex than an alignment system would lend itself to. Character retirement is an interesting thing in here. So for the most part, characters are are capped at level 10, and once they reach level 10, they've reached the pinnacle of their character class, level progression. The classes, so you have a cleric, and they go through, cleric armor and weapon restrictions. So very old school, very old school mechanics here. So this is technically going back. White Box, I believe, is going back to the very first pamphlets of D&D. So in the mid to late 1970s, before the mechanics before the various red boxes that came out in 1980 and later on in 1983. So one of the things that's kind of interesting here, and I'll show that to you really quickly, is that when you reach level 10, which is the Patriarch, all right, you can establish a temple. So for the most part, I believe that the gist of the mechanics of the game is that once your character has reached level 10, your character would retire and then become, potentially an NPC running their own, if it's a cleric, running his or her own temple, and, basic clerical abilities here. So they can turn undead at the higher levels. It's a higher level, cleric. They have some chaotic clerics and the undead optional rules. So fighters, same thing. Fighters basically have a weapons and armors restriction. They have a skill of combat fury. Their saving throws, they have some additional saving throws versus, various things. Capped at level 10, just like all others. You can see they get bonuses to hit and saving throws. The hit dice are the same, and the same thing with the weapons as well. So weapon damage is all based on a d6, and then there would be modifiers based on the different weapon types, and I'll go into that as well. So here, fighters can establish a stronghold, and they will gather a group of followers who pledge their fealty to them as well. Magic users, the same thing. They just have the casting, but unlike clerics, magic users owns a book of spells, so they have to rely on books or scrolls and such. Experience points bonus for their intelligence, and they establish a tower, so a mage's tower. Kind of cliche, I know, but they establish a mage's tower in order to signify that they have reached the pinnacle of their training. Their spell levels go up to level 12. So looking at this, but they themselves only gain up to level 10 in level. So the thief is optional, which is kind of interesting that the thief character is an optional character class. And again, weapons and armor restrictions, saving throws, thievery. So they go through the various thieves skills that they can produce. They establish a guild once they've reached level 10. And they seem to. So thievery is a stealthy and light-footed. Thievery ability may be used in a number of clandestine states. So from lockpicking to pickpocketing to locks and moving silently and such. So they have a very generic thievery skill, and so if they're successful, they're able to do all of those variety of things. It's not as broken down as Dungeons and Dragons is. So again, they establish, they increase their their experience points bonus based on dexterity-based skills. Now the character races, you have humans, obviously, and then you have dwarves, elves, and halflings. And for the most part, they're limited in skill level. Character levels. So, in most cases, they can only go up to certain levels. So, for instance, halflings can go as high as level 4 as a fighter or 6 as a thief. So, all of the demi-humans are limited in skill level or class level, based on the fact that they do get other, racial abilities that humans do not get. So humans can go higher in level. Demi-humans are limited in level, but do have other race-related skills. So the equipment, they have basic adventuring equipment, and it goes through hiring, and such, covering armors. So armor class works in two different ways. You could have it in a descending system, which is right here. I'll address this right here. So in this system, an unarmored human has an AC of 9. The armor you buy lowers your AC, so the lower the AC, the better. Or you could use the ascending system, where the more armor you have, the higher that number increases. And they will show a combat chart where it shows both systems, whether you're using one or the other, and what the rolls you would need on a d20 in order to counteract the armor level. So, as I mentioned earlier, here's your melee weapons, and you can see all of the weapons do d6 damage. And then certain weapons do a +1, some weapons do a -1, and so that's your full range. It's either, d6 -1, d6, or d6 +1. So it makes it a little bit more, more simple, to calculate. You can hire assistants. Missile weapons, same thing. As far as the range is concerned, d6 is the base damage, and then it's either a -1 or a +1 for damage. Armor classes, you can see that armor classes are either chainmail is either a -4 if you're using if you're using ascending, or if you're using or descending, I should say, and if you're using ascending, it's +4. So, however, whatever system your GM decides to use is what you would do. All right, so they go into gaining experience. So now we'll talk a little bit about the actual playing of the game, which I haven't played yet, but I intend to use this, at least test it out in some of my solo play, because I am waiting for another product, and I think that that this game will play very well with that other product that I will reveal, probably within a week or so once it's mailed to me. But it's a solo game generator, so I think I'm going to use this system for that solo game generation. So they did talk about time and movement, outdoor movement, dungeon doors, lighting, listening, secret doors, traps, so all the very basic, systems, gameplay systems. Combat, you have your initiative, you have your check for surprise, you have your initiative rolls, so just like very basic D&D, and then what to do, what's the order of combat. So obviously missile weapons go first, followed by magic, followed by movement action, followed by finally melee action. So, And here it is. It goes missile fire, casting spells, movement, and melee. In that order is the order in which initiative is resolved. There's alternatives to combat sequence that you can address. There's the attack rolls. There's an ascending quick method that you can use where, if you don't match or beat the roll, you didn't hit, and obviously if you did exceed it, you did. So that's basically how the armor and to hit modifications work. Or what you could do is you can go to the very class-specific, abilities. So fighters have different attack rolls than the other, clerics and thieves have. And then magic users a totally separate table for themselves as well. And that's back to old rules, D&D as well. There's less harsh methods for character death, so you can use the primary rule of you hit 0, you're dead, or you could use a less harsh mode where 0 means that your character's unconscious, and then you can affect these things more or less, with house rules. Healing as well. They give binding wounds, which is an optional skill, where if you don't have a healer in your party, or there isn't just that much magic in the in the game world that you're playing in, you could have binding wounds, which is something that allows characters to heal up 1d6 worth of wounds following the battle, as they state here. And they go into the various, morale and making morale checks. Jousting rules, which is kind of interesting that they would throw that in. Negotiating and diplomacy. A whole section on spells, obviously. So saving throws. So saving throws based on class, level, and then the saving throw types. And there's clerics, there's fighters, magic users, and thieves. All right. Spells and magic. So a whole section on clerical spells, magic user spells. You see there's not a huge number of spells here. So it's not like Advanced Dungeons and Dragons where you have page upon page of, a number of spells. You basically, for cleric spells, you basically have 6 levels of cleric spells. And for magic user, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, up to level 6 here as well. All right, so for magic users. And they go through all the spell descriptions. Let's go through it. Now, I've only gone through like 52 pages of the book here. I'm still in the spells section. So we'll just quickly scroll through. So running the game, so just notes on designing adventures, creating a campaign, experience points, how much should you set up as an experience points value. Sorry about that, the garage door opening. The scale of advancement, so they give you suggestions on how quickly you should advance, the characters. It depends on the type of experience you're looking for in your campaign with your gaming group, and that's something that you hash out with your players, is what kind of experience they're really looking for as well. NPC reaction. To be checked out with, let's see, getting lost on encounters. So different outcomes for, different types of terrain. So whether you get lost or you get, have encounter. That's an interesting mechanic of getting lost. I don't recall having seen that in any other systems before. So there's quite a few unique things in this that that they do a little bit differently. So the whole monsters manual section here, that started around page 80 or so, and we'll just scroll through. They have many of the expected dragons and dryads and elementals. Dark elves are not playable character races, so they're considered monsters. They have ghouls. I was surprised because oftentimes you don't see it that they do have orcs, and a lot of times these OSR games they don't have orcs. So they might call them other things. So I was quite surprised that they do include orcs. Speaking of which, is right here. So armor class 6 or 13, depending on if you're using ascending or descending. Hit dice are 1. I said all hit dice in the game are d6. And let's see. So treasure types. All right, so XP value times 1, and it'll go through and tell you what the total treasure value is, how much experience points can be gained from it, and then what type of coinage can be found in there. Magic potions, magic items, scrolls. I'm just flashing through really fast. But again, everything is pretty standard that you see in, I'd say, 99% of your fantasy RPGs, and then a few little differences in some of the game mechanics. So and that's pretty interesting. So we'll go through, and so under house rules, so I guess you just write this here, and then here's your disclaimer, your open gaming license on here. So basically, I'll come out of this view, and there's the character sheet. Just going over, you just fill out, and I will create a character for this, and and show that as part of the preview of that other the other channel feature that I'll be using. So basically, that's pretty much it. Like I said, it's it looks like a good game. It's fairly basic rules. Certainly a great RPG for new players to get into, because it is very rules light, and and even as light as the rules are, they even give you suggestions on how to simplify them even more so. And like I said, for $4.65, you really can't go wrong. I mean, this is a fantastic game to really start somebody off on. And and you have plenty of flexibility. You can make this compatible with with many different settings, and you could probably port characters from other game systems into this fairly easily with just tweaking a few numbers, a few modifiers here and there, or hit dice and such. And so I think it'll be a lot of fun to mess around, play around with this game system, pretty much. So thank you for joining in, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And the same hopes are always always at the close of my videos. So if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing, and leave comments, because comments are very useful. The reason why I'm making some of these changes on the additions to the channel, is based on people coming into the channel and watching videos and leaving comments, and in particular requesting that I take a look at either various games or various systems, and so I've been trying to be as responsive as I can to such things. So I'll look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime soon. You all have a good weekend. And once again, happy gaming.